So let's take a closer look at the challenges facing Spain's banks. I'm joined by Kane, financial sector analyst at MF Global. Thanks very much for speaking to us. We had BBVA's results. They came in just in line with analyst estimates, but really not enough to please the markets. We're expecting Santander tomorrow. What are your expectations?
Well, I think the situation in Spain in terms of the margin compression, which you've just spoken about, is pretty well flagged. We've seen the results from the domestic bank showing sharp falls in margins, largely due to the competition for deposits in Spain. The issue in Spain is that there's still a big funding gap between loans and deposits, and banks are really trying to bring in deposits at a significantly higher cost. And we've seen this morning BBVA's cost of deposits in Spain are almost doubling for them, and that's having a really big impact on their top line. So generally, as we go into the next few quarters, I think the outlook for domestic Spain and top line growth is difficult. We are seeing, as you mentioned, banks selling down branches and doing sale and leasebacks to generate some capital gains, and by and large they're doing that to reinforce the provisionings. But overall, we haven't seen very good news coming out of Spain this quarter, and the outlook doesn't seem to be improving either.
And with that in mind, Claire, will the restructuring of the savings sector lead to the closure of more branches? I mean, could that actually help to generate gains for these banks?
Yes, most definitely. I think that is part of the aim of the regulators to reduce the capacity in the system. I think there's been estimates of maybe 20% closures in branches at the savings banks. That would hopefully generate some gains for them and help to recapitalise that system. But we've seen throughout this crisis a lot of sale and leasebacks so far, and somewhat that decline in that momentum.
So of all the banks in the G20, are Spanish banks the most problematic?
I would say they're in a very difficult position, but they've come a long way throughout the crisis. I mean, we've seen that they entered the crisis with a huge stock of generic provisions, which is unlike any other system, and that's been a great buffer for them in protecting their bottom lines, as we've seen them having to put away more and more against bad debts. I think they're in a better position than they were 6 months ago, and the restructuring of the savings sector will help to bring a bit more confidence to the sector.
Claire, if I can just quickly ask you, if you can answer this very briefly. You say they're in a better position now than they were 6 months ago, but given the exposure of the Spanish banks to the property sector, which hasn't been doing well, property prices continuing to fall, is the problem going to worsen? What does that mean for the banks?
I think it will more likely stabilise. What we've seen a lot of the banks do is take over a lot of the assets from developers, and the Bank of Spain is making them provision quite heavily against those assets. So what we're likely to see over the coming quarters is banks holding on to that land that they can't sell, and by and large that will just impact margins going forward. But I would say a lot of the matter is being dealt with at the moment.
Claire Kane from MF Global, thanks very much.